So we'll discuss here the Ramsey theory of optimal commodity taxes. We know that imposition on the tax on the commodity or indirect tax on the commodity is some kind of market distortion. So market distortion means, so whenever there is we are considering the case of commodity taxation. So in taxation, whenever this type of taxation is used, this often causes inefficiency in the market. The question is, if taxation, commodity taxation causes inefficiency in the market, then what is this? Why the government should adopt it? Because the government should adopt commodity taxation will give some revenue to the government, and this revenue will be definitely used for increasing social welfare. That means which will be utilized in the welfare projects for the government. So the government or the state has to impose tax. That is the compulsion of the state. So that's why this time the Ramsey theory of optimal commodity taxation, this is some kind of optimizing theory. So how can we optimize the tax structure? That means we will here, in this case, a wide array of commodities will be taxed. A range of commodities will be taxed. But we should make the tax structure in such a way that will optimize. So optimize means definitely this is a case of minimization. So main objective of this Ramsey model of taxation. So objective of this model is to minimize deadweight loss, and there is always a constraint which we call the revenue constraint. So government has a targeted revenue which it has to fulfill by taxing different commodities, but it has to frame the tax rule in such a way that the deadweight loss will be minimum. Now we consider that there are n commodities in the market. So there are n commodities in the market. So for n commodities there will be deadweight loss DWL1 to DWL. So if we see the sum of deadweight loss for the entire society will be DWL equals to DWL1 plus deadweight loss from the nth commodity. And for each commodity deadweight loss will depend upon the deadweight loss of commodity 1 will be definitely depend upon the tax rate that the government imposes on commodity 1. And in this way we will have n commodities. So this is the objective function. The objective function is to minimize this. And now what is the constraint? So constraint is R1 plus Rn must be equals to R bar. So R bar is the targeted revenue from commodity taxation that the government has to recover. So now this R1 is also a function of tax rate imposed on the commodities. So this is our objective function, this is our constraint, so this is a constraint minimization problem. So in this case we will use the Lagrange function. Now let us frame the Lagrange function as m equals to This is the objective function minus R1 T1 plus Rn Tn equals to minus. So this is our Lagrange function, and lambda is the Lagrangian multiplier. So now we will, as we do for the Lagrangian function, we will start to minimize it with respect individually with respect to T1, T2 up to Tn. So the first order condition requires del m by del Ti equals to 0. So if we differentiate it, del dWL 1 by del T1 minus lambda into del R1 del T1 equals to 0. So similarly for commodity 2, for commodity 1 we get it, commodity 2 we will get del dW. So del T2 minus lambda into del R2 del T2 equals to 0. So I give this numeric equation name 1a, this is name 1b. So from 1a and 1b we can find that, from 1a we can find that del dWL 1 by del T1 equals to del R1 by del T1. So from there if we do cross multiplication we get, okay, so from this if we do the cross multiplication we can write here that del dWL1 by del T1 divided by del R1 by del T1 equals to lambda. So this is nothing but marginal dead loss for commodity 1 by marginal revenue the government earns from commodity 1. This will be just equals to lambda. And similarly, by the same process from equation 1b we can write m dWL 2 by mR2 equals to lambda. So from here the optimum commodity taxation rule can be represented as that m dWL 1 by mR1 equals to m dWL 2 by mR2 equals to lambda. So this lambda is Lagrangian multiplier. Now how can we explain it? This lambda must be uniform for each, and lambda indicates the next best alternative sacrificed whenever $1 comes from the hand of the people, hand of the private to the hand of the government. So we can use here lambda as the opportunity cost of $1 whenever it is paid as the tax. So now, Ramsey model of taxation says that you can impose different tax on different commodities, but whatever tax is imposed, the ratio of marginal deadweight loss and marginal revenue must be equal for all commodities. So if we see that m dWL1 by mR1 is not equals to m dWL2 by mR2, then we need to change the tax rates. For example, if we say that m dWL1 by mR1 is greater than m dWL2 by mR2. So from the tax there is more distortion in the market 1 and less distortion in the market 2. So in that case what we have to do? We have to reduce the tax rate on commodity 1 and we have to increase the tax rate on commodity 2. This process will be continued unless this ratio will be same for the both. So from the Ramsey model, Ramsey rule, the first order condition says that The tax rate may differ from one commodity to another, but definitely the rate of decline in the ratio of marginal deadweight loss and marginal revenue, that must be uniform across the commodities in the market. So this is the main point of the Ramsey rule of taxation. So it says that instead of taxing a few commodities, imposing high volume of tax only on a few commodities, it is better to spread the tax on different commodities. So reduce the tax rate on each commodities and bring more commodities under taxation. So that will ensure the minimization of deadweight loss. Now the second part is that the how to minimize the deadweight loss and the role of the relationship between elasticity and the tax rate. So we have already discussed that the deadweight loss equals to minus half into price elasticity of demand, EDES, ES minus ED into Q by P into T square. So DWL on commodity I is DI square. Now, for the sake of simplicity, we will consider here price elasticity of supply equals to infinite. The supply is perfectly elastic, and for example, price is just equal to $1. Let us consider $1 per unit. So if ES equals to infinite, we can write that ES divided by ES minus ED equals to 1. So in such case, deadweight loss of commodity 1 will be equals to minus half into ED1 half into ED1 into Q into T1 square. So if we differentiate with respect to T1, differentiate with respect to T1, what I will get? We will get minus half into ED dash into Q into 2 Q1 into 2T1. So T 2 will be dismissed. So we get it minus ED dash into Q1 into T. Now, so from here we can say that marginal deadweight loss of commodity 1 will be equal to minus price ED1 into Q1 into T1. It will be T1. Now the marginal revenue is given as T1 into Q1 commodity sold. So del R1 by del Q1, del T1 will be equals to Q1. So marginal revenue for commodity 1 will be exactly equal to the quantity of output sold. So from the equilibrium condition, we can write MDWL1 by MRO1 equals to minus ED1 into Q1 T1 divided by Q1 equals to lambda. So this Q1 will be dismissed, and from which we can write that minus T1 into ED1 equals to lambda, or ED1 equals to minus of lambda by T1. So from here, if we just avoid the direction and see the only volume, we can see that had the price elasticity or ED1 T1, or from here we can write that, or better to write it in this way, that T1 equals to minus lambda by ED1. So if we just neglect the symbol and find out only the magnitude. So what do we see? That lambda is constant because this is the Lagrange multiplier. It is constant. So higher the volume of price elasticity of demand, lower will be the tax rate on the commodity as per optimum taxation rule. So in this case we can say that as per the Ramsey rule of taxation, the higher the price elasticity of demand for a commodity, lower will be the indirect tax imposed on it. So the optimum taxation on any commodity is inversely, optimum tax rate on any commodity is inversely related to the price elasticity of demand for it. So that means the commodities with high price elasticity of demand will be charged with lower tax rate, and the commodities with low price elasticity of demand will be charged with higher tax rate.